Howdy, folks. Sorry, I'm still just flipping around, figuring a few little things out here. So give me a moment while pages load and things start looking a little more normal at my end. I think that'll just about do it. Bring my mouse back to this page, and now I'll be able to look at you here. How are you, folks? Good day, and I hope you are feeling as good as I am. See that wiggle in the shoulders? Pretty happy with the way that's working. Yesterday, I wound up getting to the specialist chiropractor, and can I just tell you, well, I expected it to work, but I was quite surprised at what happened. There were 6 x-rays taken. My rib was out. It's not broken, but one of my ribs was not where it should have been. And I got to look at those x-rays and got to learn how you look at x-rays and see bits in them and all that. It was interesting. No breaks, certainly got a tear somewhere along the rib line with cartilage or muscle or whatever, because that's what's predominantly the sorest bit still at the moment. But thankfully, he was able to put my back or my rib back in the back there, which has in turn meant that the back pain I was experiencing is greatly relieved. And then he did a little bit of manipulation on C1 and lots of x-rays and lots of angles drawn and all that kind of thing. It was the most scientific chiropractic. I say that with a question mark because I'm still not sure if that's exactly what you'd call this. But certainly it's sort of like a step up above a chiropractor. Not quite a laying on of hands, and when it was very gentle. Did this great thing with temperature, went up and down the back of my neck and up into my skull, and it gave a printout of the hot spots, if you like, in the spine. So this is something worth looking at if you have similar pain issues that come down from your neck. Maybe you're like me, sitting in a chair a great deal, probably not carrying a 10-year-old child out the front of you like I am, but regardless, hands on mice, that kind of thing as you're playing around, you wind up with a fairly bad posture. I can highly recommend going and getting this temperature ray gun thing because it will tell the qualified professional exactly which parts of your neck are giving you trouble. And there'll be some parts that you don't even realize. I'm very familiar with where my neck goes out and why it goes out and all that sort of thing. So I've sort of got a bit of insider information, if you like, when it comes to this kind of technology. So I was really interested to see how close it was going to get to where my, stresses and pains actually happen. And it was spot on, 100% spot on. So worthwhile looking at. And then, of course, that enables the treating person to really target those areas and not necessarily have to go and manipulate life, the universe, and everything. I might go and try and mute my phone at least. It allows them to target the area that needs treatment and only that area, so they're not wasting time and energy on other parts of your body that doesn't need it. At any rate, really well worthwhile going into. I am still in a bit of pain. Sneezing and coughing are not my friends, not in any way, shape, or form. But the rest of me is walking, talking, moving pretty happily. So it's great to be back on my feet. And thank you to my angel in Melbourne who know who they are. It wouldn't have been possible for me to go to the chiropractor without the benefit of that angel. So thank you. Deeply thank you. And I did, as suggested, pass on the invoice to the Thai assassin. More so just to see what happens, really. So I'll tell the story briefly. There is no great story to it. And when I sent the image through, the message that I got back via text was, "I have insurance for this." I sent a message back that said, "Well, okay, that's great. No worries. Just let me know." And then I received a message about, well, I could have, a free massage. And it went from 1 hour to 2 hours and then to 3 hours. And then there was some confusion. I wasn't the one upping the hours, right? I was just receiving the messages and saying, "Oh, well, that's very nice of you." You know, I'm a bit sore at the moment. I can't lie down on my chest at the moment, for instance. Back's a bit sore, so no, you know, maybe we'll think about this in a day or two. But it didn't quite translate for whatever reason. So I started getting these messages back saying that I was. It was all she could do. There wasn't anything more she could offer because that was all she was allowed to offer, and it seemed fair in line, you know, with the value for money and all that sort of thing. And I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever you like, cool, great. I'll, you know, get back to you. With not ever really thinking I'm going to. So at any rate, now I've assured her that I'm not a bully trying to extort her out of free massages, quote, for or endless free massages, because somewhere in the translation this has turned into me demanding endless free massages from the Thai lady that stood on my back, the assassin. Oh, not the case, promise you. Haven't demanded anything, least of all the massage. There are no demands. But can I tell you, boy, translation, what an interesting thing. Sandy, God love you, you wonderful woman. I am the donkey in the family. Maybe I should come down and let one of yours walk on me. Particularly if you have a baby one coming. You tell me if you've got a baby one coming, girl. That'll be big. And I hope Baz is doing all right too. Hello to the wonderful folks that I met in Sydney on Saturday. There were, 150, I suppose, 100 to 150 people who gathered, bothered coming to the Stargazer Park and joining us for the My Place meeting. It was really just to try and get together with folks in Sydney who are interested in getting into a My Place and hopefully from there gaining some admins in 5 different specific areas of Sydney. So that's what My Place has been split up into, and that's essentially what was being explained on Saturday with Darren and Dr. Billy Bay, who came along to give his side of the argument for everything he's going through at the moment. And they very nicely gave me the microphone for 5 minutes, which, was lovely of them, not necessary in any way, shape or form. I really only went along to show my support for My Place because the Voice of Freedom really does believe in the My Place ethos and many things. While we will have differences in certain things, Darren and I, in fact, Darren had some differences and has some differences with many of us in regards to voting and all that kind of thing. But that doesn't mean that, you dismiss everything. And Dr. Billy Bay was exactly the opposite and phrased it very well. We're all still friends. Nobody bit anybody's heads off. And it was a very productive meeting for those folks who came. A lovely day in the park at Stargazer Park in Sydney. I'll remember next time we go to Sydney that I've probably been to Sydney more recently than Darren. He informed me at one point, and I don't know how I missed it, but while we were coming in from the airport, we met at the airport after our flight sort of arrived around about the same time. We came in on the train together. And he related the story that last time he was in Sydney with his 8-year-old daughter. And I said, oh, yeah, isn't that nice? Oh, yeah. And she's now significantly older, significantly, like, mid-20s or something. That was lost on me. So when we got off the train at Circular Quay and looked at the little map as to where the park was in relation to Circular Quay, and oh yeah, we'll walk that way. I said, oh, why don't we just walk around the harbour? He said, oh, it's the long way to go. And I thought, yeah, but it's flat. He said, yeah, no, let's walk this way. So off we traipsed over the rocks at, 8:15 in the morning, which wasn't so bad. I was surprised the old heart kept up, but by God, there's some good hills in the rocks. I'd forgotten. Been a while since I've staggered around the rocks. In fact, the last time I was in the rocks, that's exactly what I was doing, staggering. So it's been a long, long time. But anyway, lovely day at the park. Had a beautiful breakfast down on the water, down near the Port Authority there, and then came back and met some wonderful folks in Sydney. Forward to coming back and seeing you all when you get your My Places established, and I'm looking forward to being able to help out there. Hello to everybody who's in the room. So we've got a little crew coming on. Every channel, I think, at the moment is working. Hallelujah. So good morning to every, good morning, good evening, good night. None2K, Voice of Freedom, the Voice of Freedom, a couple of YouTube channels going, and of course, everybody on Rumble this evening, who I don't get a note of here, but I can see there. G'day to you lot too. Thanks for coming on board. It is going to be a very interesting show tonight. I've had the opportunity and the access to get a hold of the gentleman that's joining us tonight for some time. Now, for a variety of reasons, it's taken me forever to embarrassingly get around to calling him and lining up a chat. One of the reasons for my paralysis is that the gentleman we're speaking to tonight, I believe, is one of the most forward-thinking people in this country, and not just from one perspective. He's a problem solver. He looks at something. He doesn't just moan about it. He sits down, researches, and engineers a fix for it. And I do mean engineers. That could be something from hard engineering right the way through to something that is still very hard to engineer, but has to hold up on paper. Of course, I'm talking about Tim Dwyer. Now, part of the reason of my reticence to get Tim on is because, for whatever reason, he and the beloved Vince think themselves are brothers. And I've already had Vince's 9-inch up my size 9 up. Well, you know where the size 9. And I didn't want to get the same size 9 from Tim. Good evening, Tim. Dwyer, finally welcome to the Voice of Freedom.
Good evening, Carl. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for the invitation. And yeah, I'm sorry. Vince may have a size 9. I've got a size 11. But be thankful. My eldest son has a size 19.
A size 19?
Yep.
We're talking about feet, aren't we?
Feet, yes.
Yeah.
Size 19 shoes he needs. Yeah.
So I assume he plays basketball, or watches
both boys. Yeah, both the boys played basketball. Ben only a little bit, the eldest boy, but the youngest fellow, Timothy, he's my namesake. He basically he's only a shorty. He's only 6'3", and Ben's 6'6". But Timothy was the one who really excelled at basketball. He actually got offered to go over and play for North Carolina. But decided not to. But anyway, there we go. A whole other story, another lifetime.
Yeah. Tim, I'm going to have to mute you for a bit, because as G1, the Galactic Larrikin, has pointed out, we have a terrible echo tonight, and we haven't been able to fix it before we started the show. That's why we began a little bit late tonight. So I'm going to mute Tim's microphone while I'm talking, and that way that'll save you guys, I hope, getting this echo. I would also point out, folks, that Galactic Larrikin number 1, our beloved Bradford, had a birthday yesterday, and I won't give out exactly how many times he's been around, or has he really been around the sun, but I would point to you that there is a reason he has that Noah-like beard around him. There was also some other really good news for his birthday. He and his family got to sign a contract of sale on their house in Canberra. Woohoo! I imagine he's been packing bags all day. So, yeah, spectacular. Tim, let's get on to what we're going to talk about tonight, because there are so many things I want to talk to you about, but I've got a sneaking suspicion, and we discussed it before the show. I'm feeling that people are needing a little bit of uplifting at the moment. At the moment, we've got a government and an economy that is bashing us blue, black, and blind. We've got a banking and financial system that's robbing us the same way. Everybody's being pushed for pillar to post. They are pushed for money, and one of the biggest expenses in this country, in any family, is fuel. Now, you've been working for some time on a conversion system or a kit that will allow you to get a lot better mileage out of the fuel that you employ in your vehicles, be that a heavy vehicle or even a home car. So hydrogen, it's an interesting and very, very, very interesting, possibly dangerous subject. And I'm very keen to hear how this all works. So can you please explain what hydrogen electrolysis is and how you've been able to adapt it to vehicles?
Sure. Now, I hope we're not getting the echo, because I'd like people to be able to enjoy the conversation. many years ago, before I actually married my wife, her father told her not to marry this man. He's a lunatic. He thinks he can run a car on water. Now, that was 45 years ago. However, many years passed, and about 18, 19 years ago, when the price of fuel spiked way back then, a lot of my friends who had trucks, they were struggling with the fuel. And I met one bloke one day at a roadhouse coming back from Melbourne, and a great big truckie. And I said to him, "How are you handling the price of fuel?" And this bloke turned around to me, tears rolling down his face. He said, "My best friend just committed suicide because he couldn't pay the fuel bill." And anyway, we had a bit of a chat. Now, I get out into the car and I'm driving up the road and I'm having to talk to the boss upstairs. I said, "God, you've got to help show me a way to help these truck drivers." And I had something in mind. And as per normal, the reply was silence. Anyway, a few weeks later, I'm having another discussion. And I'm a bit heated in this discussion. And I said to him, "I suppose you're just bloody happy to let the truckies die for the price of fuel." And I got this voice that said, "Tim, I've already shown you how to make hydrogen. If you'll start, I'll finish." Now, please understand something, everybody. I left school when I was 14. I was illiterate. I wasn't there the day they taught physics, science, electronics. I wasn't there the day they taught engineering. I wasn't there for any of it. And I came home and Corinne thought I'd been in an accident. I was ashen white and trembling like a leaf. I told her what had happened. She said, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I'm not the sharpest tool in the tin, but if the boss says move, you better move. You better do it." And so we started. Long story short, and $1.8 million plus later, we have a hydrogen fuel system. Now, ours is different. A lot of people, you see them on YouTube and they've got glass jars or plastic jars and plates or washers and all sorts of stuff going on. And yet they're making hydrogen, but they have no way of controlling the input or the output of energy or the output of hydrogen, which eventually then turns the thing into a kettle and it becomes steam, and they're pumping all this crap into your motor. Now, yeah, they do get a result. There's no problem with that. However, not very good for the longevity of your motor, those ones. So,
is it true that I'll just mute you again. Is it true that one of the problems that those sorts of systems have is that they burn the tops out of the pistons and help the motor disintegrate?
Yeah, that has happened. That has happened because what happens is that they end up putting far too much hydrogen in. And the other thing that they do is the chemical they use, which is usually baking powder or salts or whatever, travel on the steam and get into the engine, and they're all abrasives, and they literally just destroy the rings and the bore of the engine as well. So there's a lot of downsides to this. So as we went along, we knew we needed to get rid of the heat. Heat is the enemy of everything. We needed to be able to control the current, the amperage in and the amperage out, to a point where it would be, wherever we set it, we might set it at, say, 10 amps output. We needed to control that to 0.1, 0.2 plus or minus. And getting the electronics built was very, very expensive to design it and do what we wanted it to do. It'll take 36, 24 or 12 volts and just convert it. So then we needed to know how much hydrogen we needed per litre of fuel, be it petrol or diesel. Well, there's a good trick. How do you work that out? So there's a place in America called the Jet Propulsion Lab at Caltech University. Now, they had done it. A bloke in there called Giuradini had done it back in the 70s. So I rang them up and asked them for the formula. And, of course, they wouldn't give it to me. So that's okay. I rang them up the next day and asked them again. And I did it again. And I did it for over 60 days.
Wow.
And finally, the bloke said, look, stop. I said, no, I'm not going to stop. I said, I understand you can't tell me the exact formula, but you could give me a guidepost. And he said, well, where are you at? And I said, we're here. He said, well, you need less. Oh, okay, less. All right. And so we worked it out. Finally, they wouldn't tell me the formula, but we worked it out. And so now we know what the formula is of how much hydrogen you need per litre of fuel or diesel or petrol to give you the optimum combustion of the fuel, the petrol or the diesel, in your engine. And so, like my Commodore, a V6 Commodore, 5.8 litres per 100 out of a V6 Commodore. Pretty good.
Yep.
That's about a
I'd reckon.
40% reduction in fuel out on the highway. The
That's
trucks
huge.
we put it, yeah, it is. Like, it is huge, and you've got all the power in the world. Like, it's got more torque, more pulling power. When you pull out to pass a truck, it's beautiful. Just pull out at the back of the truck. You don't even have to flatten it. You just put your foot down a bit, and by the time you're at the nose of the truck, you're probably doing $1.40, and it's just gone. And the engines run cooler. They run like my car gets an oil change every 30,000 Ks, whether it needs it or not. Right? Normally it's every 10,000, but the oil's not dirty. There's no carbon left in the oil. When we did it, Carl, we had a test done here in Adelaide at the South Australian Government dyno. It was a $20 million dyno they built so as that they could put trucks or any vehicle on this dyno, dial up the computer as to what road, major highway you wanted to run in, right? And then the computer would tell the rollers whether it's going up hills, down hills, and the driver would actually have to drive the truck on that road.
Right.
In the dyno. And so the South Australian government had got the data that shows that we reduced the fuel consumption in heavy vehicles by 12%. We increased the torque by 15%. We reduced the temperature of the engine by 50 degrees. And we reduced the CO2e, so that's CO2 and the equivalent gases, by 78%.
Wow.
And the state and or federal government refused to give us a grant.
How do they justify a refusal in that? I mean, what bureaucrat gets to write that letter? And don't you have? I mean, South Australia is known as the green lovers state. There at one stage, a tree hugging state. Don't you have activists that could fight for you on this?
Well, we have tried a few times, but when Mitsubishi went broke and they left, there was a lot of government money left floating around, and there was a green innovation grant. You had to be green, you had to be innovative, had to be hopefully in the northern suburbs, which we are. And so we applied for it, never got it. And when we went to the dinner where they were announcing all the recipients of it, I went up to the head honcho that was running the show. I said, why did we miss out? I said, it's complicated. He said, but he said, you might as well take it to China or India. We're not interested. And I said, you're so lucky my dad's not here. He said, why is that? I said, you'd be laying in a pool of blood for being a traitor.
Yeah.
But that's what they are. And we've seen that now over and over again. I'm not a special case. They do it to any amount of people. But the funny part about it was 4 years later, an American mob applied for a grant. They got $15 million. They got it. They set them up in a factory. And when they couldn't get their hydrogen systems to work properly, they rang me up and wanted to buy my technology so as they could. It was just lunacy. So crazy.
Yeah. Now,
anyway,
we talked about this today while we were setting up this interview, because it intrigued me how, if you have found this solution, and that there's some beautiful things about this. It doesn't cut out big petrol. It doesn't cut out the petrochemical companies, and the fact that you've been allowed to develop it as far as you have and install it in so many places as you have so far, although not widespread, it's certainly not widely available on a commercial scale, you're still being allowed to do it. This is significant. So what do you take from that?
Yeah, look, we got I won't tell the whole story, but we had a little warning from Shell in the early days. As it turns out, it came from Shell, and they picked on the wrong lunatic, but that's another story. They haven't stopped us, but they haven't helped us. You see, think about it. If I reduce, say, in a tradies four-wheel drive, right? In a Mercedes four-wheel drive ute, let's say we save or a Toyota, it doesn't matter what the brand, let's say we save them 20% of their fuel bill. Think about this. That's 20% less GST on the fuel. That's 20% less fuel excise. Now, the engine companies don't like us because the engines don't wear out. Like my V6 Commodore, the earlier one, I put that aside at 700,000 Ks. Still the original motor, right? Still the original gearbox, everything, 700,000 Ks. So nothing wears out. So the engine manufacturers don't like us because they're not selling parts. So the government don't like us, the oil companies don't like us, and the engine companies don't like us. So they just leave us go, but they make it difficult. Now, in that, I think they want to see where our technology will develop, because we're the only people literally at this stage that have got any commercial viability about them that has the formulas, the electronic control modules, the manufacturing of these things, and they never wear out.
Yeah.
Our systems never wear out, right? So if you bought one and put it on your ute or your camper van or whatever you put it on, when that's worn out and you want to sell the vehicle, pull our system off and bolt it onto the next one, right?
Now,
and
your system
we've had
isn't hard to put on either, by the sound of it. There's not a
oh
lot
hell
to it.
no, it's literally, drill 5 holes, put some bolts in, plug and play, and connect it to the battery, and the electronics control everything else. So it's well designed, and in this, that we've just installed one up in the Barossa the other day on a irrigation pump. We've got them on pumps, we've got them on generators, we've got them on trucks, we've got them on road. We got a guy up in Kalgoorlie. He's running a Kenworth with a Cummins 15-litre engine in it, and he's pulling 200 ton with this thing.
Wow.
Right? So we've got them on, and we've put them on everything down from C4 Citroens up to GD Falcons and Commodores and Toyotas. They're on everything, but it's not as you say, it's not widely known. It's not widely commercialized, and we've had a few stumbling blocks, but that's what you get when you go out and pit yourself against the world.
Yeah, absolutely. People are asking, are the savings similar between petrol and diesel? Is it workable on petrol and diesel? How does it impact LNG or LPG rather? How does that work? Petrol v diesel v LNG?
LPG.
That one.
Yeah, they all work. The diesel it's really interesting because what the hydrogen does, it's there only as a stimulant to burn all the unburnt fuel in the combustion chamber. Okay. Now, today, in petrol engines, we're still getting a good, 20% fuel savings on the modern engines. And the other thing with the diesels, you don't see the soot coming out of the new diesels anymore.
No.
Right? Because they've got the diesel particulate filters, which capture the soot. Now, the soot is unburnt fuel. That's all the soot is, right? The black soot. So there's still inconsistencies in the combustion in the diesel engine. So what we then do is you're going to get probably around about, again, 15, maybe 20% on four-wheel drives and motorhomes. Trucks, you're not going to get that much. You're probably going to get 12% on semi-trailers and B doubles. But that 12% equates to about $2,000 a month savings on fuel, right?
Yeah.
So in that, an LPG, direct injection LPG is very efficient. I won't sell them to people with that because they're just too efficient with the direct injection. The old ordinary method of LPG, yeah, we still get really good results on that, 20-25%. So across the board, it works.
It's amazing that people aren't aware of this, and I would have thought the agricultural sectors, the mining sector and whatnot would be chasing you too, but there is this big push to green technology, and more particularly electric technology. Now, you highlighted a very interesting point there with your savings, or the savings that are generated using your system. We're looking at a 40% tax reduction in road taxes and all that from fuel excise. Where's the fuel excise in electric cars?
There is none.
Yeah.
There is none. And, the interesting thing about an electric car, you have to use your entire battery pack to the point where it's unusable, replace it, and get a quarter of the way through the life of the next battery pack to make the first car neutral in energy. If they're buying them from a green perspective, it's not working. If you're buying it for the thrill of going like a cut snake, yeah, they work good. I mean, they're fast. They are serious fast, right? And but again, let me just duck back onto what I said about the diesels with the diesel particulate filter. On a Toyota Ute, if you need to replace that DPF, the diesel particulate filter, $4,500. If you want to do it on a Mercedes Benz, it's $6,000. If you do it on a truck, then $9,000. That's just to replace the diesel particulate filter to stop what we stop in the combustion chamber.
Yeah. I'm staggered that the world isn't all over you. There are huge trucking companies, and Roger Penske's springs to mind in America. I would have thought that would be all over this kind of technology.
Well, we went to Cummins in America, and they, again, without a long story, they basically told us that they get $1 million a day given to them by the oil companies for engine development. They're not interested in looking at anything else that burns less fuel because they don't want to damage their $1 million a day from the oil companies to build engines, to try new things in their engines. And so that was interesting. There has been times where different government bodies and different engine companies and truck companies have told a few furphies. We have people in a large in truck building business telling people not to put our systems on because we were blowing up engines. Now, I said, well, okay, fine. Please send me the bill for every engine I've blown up and show me the damage that was caused by our system. You have to prove that it was done by our system. And, oh, well, no, we got rid of them all. Oh, did you really? Yeah, okay. Well, show me the paperwork that showed that we did it. Oh, we lost it. We can't find it. Because it never happened. And so there's been these sorts of things, Carl. And look, it's amazing, as you would know, and a lot of your viewers will know, that you come up with something new, and there's always somebody out there that's going to, throw a stick in the wheel and go, "Oh, mate, seen all that crap before. Nah, bugger off. Not interested." And so, what do they're the head mechanic of a massive trucking company. I even had Ray Scott when he was alive. We fitted him to Ray Scott's trucks.
Wow, yeah.
Going up, the road trains going up and down to Darwin. And Ray was bloody ecstatic. He goes, "Mate, this is beautiful. This is excellent." So I did a full spreadsheet for him on his fleet to show him how much fuel he'd save, right? How much he'd save on engine rebuilds, and he wouldn't have to buy new trucks to comply with Tier 3 and Tier 4 Euro 4 emissions. Do you know what Ray said to me? He said, "That's an impressive figure." He said, "But there's a couple of things going on that maybe you're not aware of." He said, "I'm the third biggest importer of fuel into the country." He said, "I want people burning more fuel, not less." He said, "Secondly," he said, "my drivers like new trucks from time to time." I thought, I don't have an argument to come back to him with that, because the $25 million I was going to save him really didn't mean anything to him, because he had more than he needed.
Yeah.
So, these are the things that you bump into along the way.
That's certainly an interesting roadblock when you're confronted with it. I've had similar ones at various times in my career, when you just run into people who money means nothing. It's more about there's something else in it for them. It's either the thrill of the chase of putting the deal together. It doesn't really matter what the deal is. They just make sure that they win in the deal, and they cripple whoever is on the other end of that deal as badly as they possibly can. Bastards. So I've got some questions that have popped up in the course of this chat. Bruce wants to know approximate costs for the system re a 4-cylinder diesel Hilux. It seems he might be asking for a friend.
Yeah. Hey, Bruce. Look, the 4-wheel drive units, they're about the size of a shoebox, and we retail them at $3,800. Now,
Wow.
we will do mates rates. We'll do Carl's mates rates. So
that's great.
what we'll do,
we will say that one more time. Dropped out.
Carl's mates rates. So we'll go from 3.8, and I could do 3,750. No, sorry.
You're the one making them.
Yeah, no, we'll do from 3.8 down to 3.4 for Voice of Freedom mates. And
mate.
happy to do that, because
as we both know a guy who can set up an email address very, very rapidly, particularly while the show's still going, and I'm sure he's watching. Vince, set up an email address. You come up with a name for it and text it to me before the show's out. And if people are interested in taking up this offer, we can pass their details along to Tim straight away. And at least you'll know they've come from us then, mate. They'll give you a bit of an idea if we can help.
Now, Carl, I'm juggling times here. All right, I've got an overseas appointment I've got to get to. But we were going to talk about another thing. Like, I'm a lunatic on hydrogen. I am the biggest nutcase you've ever come across. I'll sit and talk hydrogen to you all day. I love it. We do all sorts of things. We're looking at making hot water heaters out of hydrogen, that if you've got a solar panel on your house, because you won't need any more energy than that. As I said to you before, we are 200 times over unity with our. So what we do is the energy we take into our system versus the energy that comes out of our system. We put out 200 times more energy than what we take in, and the brains in the universities and that just can't get their head around it. Yeah. And I'm just glad I didn't go to school that day, because I would have learnt what I was incapable of doing rather than figuring out how to do it. So that was a good day. But we wanted to talk a little bit about the Constitution.
Sure. And I do have a question about that, so we'll kick off with that. This one from one of my greatest followers, Sunflower, God love her. She comes from up the Noosa way. She wants to ask about the Zoom call you had with Wayne Glue and when you'll be filing with the federal courts in America, and can we also file in that?
It's interesting. Wayne's not well at the moment. Wayne's in hospital with gallbladder infection. Poor bugger's in a lot of pain. But anyway, that's an ongoing process. There's a lot going on. On one of my videos, I asked people if they had an interest in joining a class action, and the response to that has been massive. It's just boom, blew up, right? And but what we're looking to do is because Australia, as you all know, is a registered corporation in the United States Securities Exchange Commission. Therefore, they come under US law, right? So we've got to understand there's two commonwealths. There's the Commonwealth that was created at the turn of the century, at 1900, when all the states agreed to unite in one indissoluble Commonwealth under that constitution. Then, through all the nefarious stuff, and I'm not going to get stuck on the details of when the rot started and all that sort of stuff. I'm picking a date just for the sake of picking a date. And the date is, there's two dates, there's 1973 and 1986. And those two dates turned the Commonwealth into a corporation. And in the Act, the Performance Act, I forget what, hang on, no, I can't get it up. They state that the corporate Commonwealth is separate to the Commonwealth by law. So the corporate Commonwealth is separate to the non-corporate Commonwealth, and it's separated by law. Now, that means when we're talking about our Constitution, we're talking about what was set up in 1900, right? The other thing is that they're talking about their Constitution that was set up in 1986. And we all think we're talking the same language. We're not talking the same language. What Wayne and I and a couple of others want to do is see what we can do in the US Supreme Court with charging the corporate Commonwealth of 86, we'll call it 86, with literally a laundry list of crimes against humanity, crimes of treason, crimes of fraud, crimes of all manners of things, mass murder. John Howard will go down for that, what he did in Tasmania, all this sort of stuff. Now, we want to see what we can put forward there. Now, we also want to protect the people that want to come with us. So we've put our hand up for a couple of blokes to give a big, long thought about putting in $5 million each. So as in case we lose, we are not going to have the people that have come with us suffer a financial loss. To join in with what we're doing, we're probably going to ask for $10 just so as that there's a legal commitment to the process. Now, failing, if we don't get any joy out of the US courts, and it might have to wait until late 24 to get it, if you understand where I'm coming from. Yep. But the other access we have is actually into the High Court of England, because under our original Constitution, it is an act of the English Parliament. And anybody who creates a crime against that Constitution or against the monarch, you can have it either way. Either the monarch and or a crime against the Constitution is guilty of treason or sedition at least. And so if we can't get them through America, we want to take them through the High Court. Now, you got to start with the end in mind. We've got to have a vision of what sort of country it is that we want to end up with We don't just want to have a perpetual eternal fight. I'm sick of the fight. I'm bloody old. I want to go fishing, like I shouldn't be, Carl, we shouldn't be doing this stuff at our age or my age. Look, I'm long-term 70, it's full on. So what we want to do is have a picture in our mind of what we think our country wants to look like. And this is going to depend on everybody in this country to come up with a vision of what we want it to look like. But here's what I believe I would like to see. And I hope this rings a bell with your people, Carl, is that Australia should have a very, very small, very limited government, federal government. The state governments should be a little bit larger than the federal, but a lot smaller than what they are. The biggest employer in South Australia is the state government.
Yep.
It's insane. Yep. Right?
I don't think, I'm pretty confident that Queensland is in the same boat, particularly after they got rid of Campbell Newman, who managed to get rid of, I think it was close to 20,000 public servants in his time, but that was how they set out to get rid of him. And they didn't just re-employ those people. They tripled them, I think, on Anastasia Plakaduck's return. She's under a bit of pressure at the moment. Up here, at least in the media, they're saying she's off on her second European holiday with a new boyfriend, and the state's in decline. So fingers crossed they'll assassinate each other. But don't think for a moment that whoever rises is going to change anything. They are just this is just a distraction. It always has been. Tim, the constitutional argument. The constitutional arguments are thick and fast, and I've looked at yours. I don't know enough about the systems in, out, or otherwise. Fitz and I started the Magna Carta 1215 Learning Centre, and I've got to say, we talked about this earlier today, my knowledge starts with that and what I would expect to come from that going forward. You guys have done years, 30 years of research, and more for some other people. This research cannot be discounted, but the freedom movement, and more particularly, let's call it the constitutional movement in Australia, is led by a number of people, a number of areas. I would say I could probably confidently give you 6 to 8 different arguments that are being put forward at the moment. They all are slightly the same, but slightly different. And yet none of them seems to be the solution enough to gain popular support by we the people. Do you see that as a problem for your position going forward?
Look, I really don't think so, because everyone that's on the constitutional page, we all have a lot in common, and there are a lot of differences in the views that we take as to when this happened or what that means in the Constitution or whatever. However, I think what we have in common is enough to get us through, is that we want to see the end of the corruption. And the other side of our Constitution is, from my perspective, and look, I'm the student of Dick Yardley. I'm the student of Wayne Glue. I'm the student of Augusto Zimmerman in WA. And in this, I don't discount anybody else's argument, because I'm not saying it's my way or the highway. I'm a long way off that, I can tell you. But yeah. I'm solution orientated. You show me a problem and I'll solve the problem. I used to call myself a solutionist, right? Didn't matter what the problem was. Show me the problem and leave me alone, and I'll figure out how to get out of the mess, whatever it is. Now, in doing this, what we're proposing with the US and the High Court of England, we might well get our bum handed to us in a sling. But what that will enable us to do is find out where we went wrong in our approach to this. Now, our approach is really, really simple. we have to get rid of the corporation that calls itself government, because it is not. It is being controlled out of the United Nations, as we all know. Now, Australia, being as valuable as it is, I call it prime one. Australia is prime one when you think about its geographic location, when you think about its mineral and ore content, when you think about its food content, and when you think about its innovative content. Now, I'm only a small part of that innovative content, but the Australian people have an innovation aspect that we can build anything. Get out of our road, we will build it, we'll fix it, and it'll work. So we are prime one. We literally, to a great degree, need no other input from overseas if we're allowed to govern ourselves. And we're not allowed to govern ourselves at the moment under a number of reasons. Now, one of the constitutional arguments is that says that we can't come out from under the corporation because we owe too much money to the banksters. Well, if years ago, 20 years ago, I went to a conference in Thailand that was run by Australians and Canadians about taxation law. And they put a proposal that wipe out every tax, and put a 5% expenditure tax in. That's it. But BHP have to pay it, Rio Tinto has to pay it, Qantas has to pay it, everybody has to pay it. You have to pay it, I have to pay it. On today's dollars, that would bring in 4.6 trillion Australian dollars value today per year and growing. Within 2 years, we could pay the bankers our debt. We'd be out free. So we owe nobody anything. The other side of that is I have this vision where we would run a direct democracy, Carl. Today, we all have these phones in our hands that can do everything for us. So we could put an app on there, and each month we could run a referendum for free. It costs nothing. Do you want this or do you want that? Click yes, click no, whatever. And everybody could participate. We could change laws in this country so as that our constitution is remedied to the modern era. We don't have to, for God's sake, don't throw this constitution out, regardless of whether it's my view of it or Dick Yardley's view of it or Wayne's or Darren Dixon's or anybody else's, right? Our constitution, what most people, there's people out there running around saying we need to throw it out and start a new one. Well, our constitution is one of the most highly rated legal documents of the modern era, right? Now, there's no other document out there that gives people more protections than what ours does. Now, all right, the American Constitution has the amendment where you can all carry a gun. Well, we can amend ours to do that. But don't throw out the good bits that in thinking you're going to get a better one, because quite frankly, I don't know anybody today in this country or anywhere else that I would entrust to write a better document.
All right, strong words. I know that there are some people who are working on just that document, and I think that's a fail right from the outset, because constitutions, as far as I'm aware, are written by the people, not by individuals, and sort of put forward by them. There is talk of a constitutional convention at some point next year. How useful is something like that going to be if people like yourself and the other names that you've mentioned aren't invited to have a big seat and a free speech at that sort of a convention?
Let me choose my words fairly carefully here. Any particular person or group of people who feel that they want to come together and start fresh and rewrite a whole new constitution without taking approximately 10 years and asking millions of people to participate in it, because this country is not made up of a particular person at the head, 4 or 5 or 10 other people at their side, again dictating what they believe would be a good constitution. That is what we call a dictatorship. This is a democracy. Now, a democracy only works well in a highly educated society. And unfortunately, this society is not highly educated anymore. So we have to have time to firstly educate the population. We can't educate the population until we have control of the airwaves and the television and everything else. When I say control, I mean get the corporation out of office in Canberra and bring back the press as the press was designed to be. And if anybody listened to John Kennedy's speech on the press, that's a good place to get a handle on what the press should do, but they don't. And educate the people of this country so as that they understand that the very simplistic part of our Constitution is this. It starts off with, whereas the people of New South Wales, Victoria, Tasmania, Queensland, South Australia, and West Australia came on later on, humbly relying on the blessings of Almighty God, have agreed to unite in one indissoluble federal commonwealth under the crown of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. Right? Now, and under this Constitution, it goes like this. Whereas the people, humbly relying on the blessings of Almighty God, we came into an agreement under the crown of the United Kingdom. Now, that's the proper crown. That's not the St. Edward's crown. That's not the Catholic crown. That is the Queen Victoria type crown. Now, so therefore, any constitution that's going to read any different than that will put the people subservient to somebody. The people of this country are the people that, it's hard to explain this without another whole 2-hour session, but Australia is actually called, its original biblical name for Australia is Beulah land. You want to look that up. Right? Now, if you can find some very old Aboriginal elders, and I mean the ones in the bush, not the city dwellers, not the 18th degree of separation, but you talk to the old people and ask.
There's a town in the Wimmera, I want to say, in Victoria called Beulah. I wonder if that's got anything there.
Well, it's interesting, Carl, because Beulah land, if anybody wants to do the research on it, Beulah land has to have X amount of miles, thousands of kilometers to the north, thousands of kilometers to the east and west, and girded by mountains and girded by the water at the south, and have a lockstone in the middle.
Sounds a bit like us, really.
Sounds a bit like us, right? So we hold, Australian people, we are blessed to be in this land. And it's not just the Aboriginal people, it's all people who are born here, who are here. We are the Australian people. And if somebody wants to write another set of rules for us to live by, they better have some history of knowledge behind them. They better ask the 26 million of us what we want, because it's not what they want, it's what we want as a nation.
Yep.
And, so I don't think that convention, if there is one, will hold water, to be quite honest. Because firstly, you've got to get rid of the corporation out of here first.
Sure. That's
what we're trying to do.
Yep. Mate, I know you've got somewhere else you have to be, so I'm going to let you go. As you said, we could talk about this for another 2 hours, and I think we will. We'll just do it on another night. Now that I've finally been able to extract Vince's size 9 from the date, and you and I have finally made contact, I'm looking forward to having much greater discussions with you on both the topics that we've covered tonight. But have a sneaking suspicion that you might have a few more topics up your sleeve that we might wind up sitting around a table when I come to South Australia discussing.
I've got one other topic. We won't discuss it now, but many, many years ago, I was fortunate enough to learn about a process called EFT. Now, that's not electronic funds transfer. This is emotional freedom technique. And it gets rid of fears, phobias, anxiety, stress, pain, all sorts of stuff. It's brilliant. And it's about tapping on meridian pressure points, right? I became the first master practitioner of EFT in Australia. And I worked in jails and rehabs and worked with rape victims and child abuse victims and Olympic athletes and all sorts of stuff. So we can also cover some of that to alleviate the stress and anxiety of a lot of the people out there today.
Mate, that is perfect. And yes, I would love to get into a conversation about that. So when we come to South Australia, I think we might come and spend a week somewhere near you and have a lot of different conversations. We'll record them all or play them all live. I don't care one way or the other. I think they're going to be very interesting chats. Thanks for joining us tonight, mate.
Thank you. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, Tim Dwyer, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to take advantage of Tim's very generous offer, if you are interested in a hydrogen system for your vehicle, normally $3,800. For Voice of Freedom viewers, it's $3,400. That's great. Now, I don't know if Vince has had time to set up an email address, so just send an email to vince@vofhq.com, and we will make sure that anybody who's interested in this will be able to get a hold of Tim and purchase one. As he said, it is not a hard system. There's not much of it. It's about a shoebox size. There are 5 screws, 1 hose, and a couple of other things you've got to connect. But at the end of the day, any reasonably competent mechanic will be able to install the bits that are required. Really, it's just a motherboard and hose and a couple of other bits, a box. You're not having to play around with any of the internals or try and set any of that stuff up. It all comes sort of prepackaged. So if you have a petrol or a diesel vehicle, and don't worry about the engine size. If you've got a small 4-cylinder petrol or turbo diesel motor, or you've got a V10 petrol or diesel motor, it doesn't matter. For the very, very big motors, you might need 2 systems. For the very, very big systems, like I'm talking maybe those road train sort of things that he was discussing, that is probably a 2 system. But if you are a semi-trailer or running a B-double or something like that, my understanding is no. I think a B-double pulls 61 ton, might be a little bit more than that. I think the triples will pull 80. Is it 82 or 90 ton? Might even go up to 101. I think the heaviest weights that we tow on our roads are 101 ton. And he's got this system in fleets of those vehicles. Now, yes, you can put it in. I saw, I think it was Rob, Galactic Alaric and Rob asked a question, can you put these things in older vehicles? My word, you can. That is not the problem. George, that was an interesting one you put up. Tim, you live in a grand house, you must be rich. No, he doesn't live in a grand... Well, I don't know what sort of a grand house he lives in, but I can tell you that if it came down to it, I can live in the same background. I can live in the same grand house. That's just a virtual background. We can do a little Magna Carta if you'd like to do that. I can, blur out the bedroom behind me, put up an old thing. And generally these days I, pick one or the other, and we go from that. So, George, the marvels of modern technology and green screen, it's called, or in this case, virtual green screen. So don't go throwing those sorts of aspersions around about the quality of someone's life just because they happen to be having a good green screen experience behind them. It's very easy to tell somebody who's got green screen. If you look around my head, you'll see that there is fuzzy bits and pieces. It looks like my hair's dragging. Part of me disappears into the picture, particularly if I've got the other or wrong coloured shirt on or whatever. So that's the way you can pick if there is a virtual background or a green screen. Particularly in the amateur side of the business and television studios, you can still see the outline usually around the person in a green screen. But if don't be tricked, green screen technology is blue screen is even better. That's a whole other thing. So Rob, I think I answered your question. Yes, they can be put into old cars. Glennis, you can contact, as I said, us. We'll put you in touch with Tim. Tim is based in Adelaide in South Australia, but if you want to contact him, just get a hold of Vince at vofhq.com. He's going to love me doing that. And thank Vince for all his work, but get him to forward that on to Tim. And Tim will be in contact with you, I am sure. I'm unsure of how busy they are or, what sort of time factors are involved, but or how many units indeed that he has already produced on hand that can be either installed there or sent out for installation somewhere else. I am very confident that if you have a competent mechanic you go to that you trust, and or maybe your hubby is a mechanic and looking for that, or you just have to be slightly mechanical. I get the idea. You don't need to have much knowledge, much less a great deal of tools. So it's very easy to fit from understanding, and can turn up in your mailbox and away you go. Rob, you find it hard to believe that a Crappador did 700,000 K. I know VN Commodores and later Commodores that have done well over 1 million kilometres on their original engine. These are usually taxis or limousines, and they have good gearboxes in them. They had good engines in them, and because taxis and limousines are serviced every 10 to 15,000 Ks at the most, the engine systems and brake systems and all that always have to be top line. There is inspections. They've got to go over the pits every 12 months. So these cars are always kept in tip-top condition. So while a taxi that's done, 1.2 million kilometres at the end of it might be just an old rattling trap. Yes, they do, start to loosen up with age. You can stick another engine in them, they'll go another 1 million kilometres, and the engines aren't expensive. They're also very good cars to do up just between you, me, and the gatepost if you happen to find a good one. They are very good indeed. Bruce, I think you got your question answered about how much for a 4-cylinder, and yes, petrol and diesel and LPG. So if you've got a dual fuel vehicle that uses LPG, you can still have this hydrogen system attached to it, and you will gain, I think he said, up to a 25% increase. And it's not just a reduction in the fuel that you're using. It is actually an increase in power being generated as well. So for instance, it will obviously increase your acceleration speed a bit, a higher octane burn. If you go and put, the high octane 98 octane fuel in your, old car that's normally used to having 91 in it, once it gets into the system and you throw the thing into gear and stick your foot into it, you will notice a very big difference in how the engine reacts. It'll leap into life and rev out and do all that. That's all because it's got just that little bit of extra oomph in it. Well, essentially, all that's being added is a little bit of hydrogen to give the fuel a little bit of extra oomph and burn completely. And it's making full use of everything that can be burnt in that compression cylinder at the time. So I think it's an amazing system. And if you have a petrol or a diesel vehicle and you do long kilometres, you can see where this is going, and you're doing long kilometres, then I think you really need to get this in your car. With savings of 20 to 40% between petrol and fuel, you're not cutting the big fuel companies out. You're just not stopping at them as often. And that is a phenomenal saving if you are doing big kilometres. If you've got a trucking company, if you are simply a contractor who's doing, a few hundred kilometres a week, even carrying a truck, you're probably putting in a tank of fuel a day. What about you guys driving excavators and towing those excavators around to jobs? all this sort of stuff has got to be of interest to you, because at the end of the day, $3,400 isn't even a day's work for you guys. And yet the fuel savings could mean the difference between a holiday down at your local beach and a 5-star resort holiday, somewhere on the Queensland coast or further afield if you choose to go so. I'd be pretty interested in, well, the latter, just between you and the gatepost. Let me skip back down and see Vince has just pointed out all it costs is demineralized water. So, yeah, you've got to put demineralized water into the system, and after that, you're on your way. Now, does that mean you've got to find some way to demineralize 100 litres of water? Well, I guess that depends on the vehicle that you're powering or wanting to power, and how far you want it to go before you need to put more water in it. I'm not the person who came up with this idea, but we will get Tim back on again. In fact, I'm determined to go and see how all this is done. And God knows Vince has been telling us for a long time now that we haven't been to South Australia. A lot of people in South Australia want us to come there. So we're very happy to be coming there, well, sooner rather than later, and we'll have some news on that in the near future. But yes, would love to come down, and I think we'll film the process. We'll see how it works, what it can be done, and I think we will use our trip to South Australia and the fuel figures and whatnot that we get. We will share with you guys, and then get down there at the other end and pay our $3,400 and get a system installed, and then we'll drive back to Queensland and see what a difference it is. We'll share it with you. Tim backs his system. I've got no reason to doubt it. And quite frankly, if we're going to travel, and we live on donations around here, the biggest cost by far in what we do and what we're about to do is fuel. That is by far the biggest cost. It costs anywhere between, $100 and $120, $30, $40, depending on the price of fuel, to fill up every time you go near a Bowser. The vehicle I've got, doing highway Ks might do 700, 750 Ks before you need to fill up. There are other vehicles that will go further. I can't afford a Mercedes. So, and there are other vehicles, of course, that go a lot less. Savings of 20, 30, 40% are massive, particularly when you consider large kilometres. I can't tell you the exact figure because I haven't sort of added it all up, but let me do a rough calculation in my head. So in the last year, from when we went down to Victoria, we did do all our fuel figures down there and back, and I remember those. Since then, we have been back to Victoria again, to Canberra, to Sydney, to far north Queensland, got the figures for that. So I've spent over $10,000 well over $10,000 in fuel just to get around the countryside. We've done, since I bought the vehicle, done nearly 80,000 kilometres in it. So about 73,000 kilometres in it. And that's since February last year. So, yeah, the cost is significant. So if you can help, love to have you as a member. If you'd like to donate a few bucks for fuel, we'd love to have it. It makes it easier for us to get wherever we're going, and try and spread the message a bit. The message is, well, there's a lot of good messages coming, folks. I feel very positive about the future. And even while many say, oh, look, you can't see anything going, or there's a bit of hopium floating around. Look, I'm not up for giving hopium. I just want to tell you how I feel. You take it for how it is. Somebody said to me the other day, gee, September 23rd is going to be interesting. Well, September 23rd, all of September, all of October is going to be interesting from my perspective, simply because it begins with 9/11, I suppose, is probably the most salient date in September for what's coming. I believe September and October are the 2 months of the year that historically the share markets can get very jittery and historically have their worst moments. Donald Trump, apparently, I've been doing other things. I've been following the Trump saga. I thought October, but apparently the Atlanta, Georgia Department of Public Prosecutions, or whatever they are, DA, has brought forward the case to September 23rd. I think there is probably one particular view on that I think will stand out for us all. Have a look at that face. I think that's what you're going to be looking at from September the 23rd. And what will be coming out in that trial will be irrefutable. I'm pretty confident. I really hope. I'm praying that that's what's going to happen. It will be irrefutable. However, does that mean it won't be refuted? Who owns the courts? Who owns the justice system? And could that be the catalyst? What if Trump is locked up? Well, they're not going to lock him up in a jail. They'll, have to put him under home arrest somewhere because, let's face it, he is an ex-president. He is entitled to Secret Service protection, and in jail, he'd probably need it. Are they going to send a Secret Service detail in to protect him every day? Probably, if they had to. How ridiculous would that be? So, no, it's easier to stick him in Mar-a-Lago and let him walk around there, just not let him play golf, I guess. That would be how they would look at it. Some other little bits of news before we let you go tonight. Somebody sent me some pictures the other day. These were apparently taken in Western Australia, but I might have that wrong. This is picture number 1. If you have a look very closely where that arrow is pointing, what do you see? Looks a bit weird. I'll show you the second one. Yeah, it does certainly look like there is a dark planet behind the sun, or something behind the sun. Do you think that's the case? Now, I've heard of Nibiru. That is what these pictures were termed when they were sent to me. So, I don't know, folks. What do you reckon? That's up to you. You tell me what you think about that one. This is a good one, how to make your vote count. So this is being pushed out now for the referendum. Do you see how confusing it is? I hope not for all people, but clearly we are going for a yes and a no as the only ways to write on the ballot paper. If you agree with it, you write yes. If you disagree with it, you write no. We disagree with it. We disagree with it all. If they ask or stick on a supplementary question, which it doesn't look like they will, but if they do, it'll be on a supplementary piece of paper, then my bet is the answer to that is no as well, or possibly yes, because these bastards are just so evil. They can invert the world as it goes, and the answers that we give. So just be a bit careful. But at this stage, I don't expect there to be a second question. It would be highly illegal, and I think they were planning it, but somebody was awake up to it, and they let us all get back to it. Louise wanted to know about the rubber ball from the Resurrection of a Cripple show. So I got to tell you, this has been my savior. This is what this thing is. So you can see it's an Anko product, rubber massage ball. You open it out of the box, pull it out, and this is it. See, now there you go, George. This is how you tell a green screen. Try and push it up. So yeah, it doesn't like the black. So shit. Try that again. Take 2. It's this. It's quite solid. You can see I can't compress it, but there is some compression to it. Now, I used to have one of these, a massage ball. Well, it wasn't really a massage ball. You might have seen them. There used to be a stick that had 2 wooden balls that came off it. You roll up and down your back. Oh, gee, isn't that nice? Well, I broke the 2 wooden balls off, put them in a sock, and have them hanging over my back so I could push it in. Don't do that. Okay, the wood, it doesn't give. And sometimes you think, oh, that's a good thing. It'll just push everything back into place. Don't do that. it gives you deep bruising, really deep bruising, especially if you're pushing on it very, very hard. But this baby, not so much. So you won't be able to see, but I can drop that down behind me and position it on my chair. And if I actually lock my chair, which I've got to figure out how to do, I can lean back into it, roll it around. The other really good place to use it, I've found, is across my chest, rolling it across here. And that makes all these little things pop in here. It is a really nice feeling. If you do this while you're lying in bed, just before you go to bed, it keeps your hands from doing other things. What can I say? Do I have anything else to share with you? I think I've probably shared enough with you all tonight, have I? How awful is that? I think I've got Sunflower's attention now. And the Galactic Larrikin is in between box packing, having a good night too. And I hope Sue is as well. Folks, love your work. That is a bloody godsend if you have a sore back. I do have something else that I have been known to play with. In fact, I've actually chewed through 3 of these things because I'm sorry. This is going to get embarrassing now. My name is Carl, and I'm an addict. This piece of medieval bloody torture equipment is not what you think, or some of you think. This thing hooks over your shoulder like this, and you can put it into wherever that knot happens to be, and then you can pull on the bastard. Now, as you can see, I've pulled mine to a point where it's a bit soggy and hangs to the right, or droops to the right, or possibly, well, you know what it means. So anyway, these 2 little things here are very good for the back of your neck to do this, and this thing, I don't know what to do with this bit yet. I mean, I've had some thoughts, but I live by myself, so what can I say? All right, I'm going to stop before I really say something stupid that gets me in trouble. So that is my home chiropractic kit. The ball comes from Sharon, our wonderful housemate, who got it through the gentleman that she sent me to yesterday to go and see to fix my back. I can tell you it's probably not the done thing to walk into a complete stranger's office, sit there for 15 or 20 minutes or so, fill out all your personal details and all that information. There was like 5 or 6 pages of ticking boxes, and no, I didn't do this, and yes, I can sneeze. And then when you finally get to meet the doctor for the very first time, you probably shouldn't shake them by the hands and say, oh, Dr. Cam, wonderful. I've heard so much about you and your black balls. The poor lady sitting at reception nearly choked.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?